Is solving equations that have radicals. Okay, when you are solving an equation with a radical, what you're going to look to do is isolate your radical, put it on one side, alone on one side of the equation. Then you're going to undo the radical. So you can do that, in this case, by squaring both sides. If you have a cube root or fourth root, you can take the appropriate reciprocal power. And then you solve the resulting equation. So here in a problem like this first one, our radical's already isolated. Okay, I am going to square both sides to get rid of that radical. And when I do, I get x plus 3 is equal to, and on the right side, I'm going to have to expand that out. It's a binomial square, so my expansion pattern is x squared. So I'm going to square the 3, square the x. Then I'm going to take the product of these two bases, and I'm going to double them. So 3x times a negative 1 is negative 3x. Double that, I get negative 6x. Then I'm going to square my last term, plus 1. Okay, remember that a binomial square expands into a trinomial. Okay, it's a perfect square trinomial. Okay, if you don't remember the pattern for it, just physically FOIL it out on the side somewhere. Okay, once you get to this step, we can then solve the resulting equation. It is a quadratic equation. There's multiple variable terms, so we move everything to one side and set it equal to 0. So the 9x squared stays as it is. I'm going to subtract x from both sides and subtract a 3 from both sides. And once I get my solution, or once I get my quadratic here, I can now solve this either by trial and error, okay, or I can rewrite the middle term method. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite the middle term. Did we talk about that? About going through the process? Okay. So if you're going to rewrite the middle term, we take our leading coefficient times our constant. 9 times a negative 2 is negative 18. And you're going to look for two factors of that product, negative 18, whose sum is the middle term's coefficient. So what two factors of negative 18 have a total sum of minus 7? Negative 9, positive 2. So I'm going to rewrite my middle term as the sum of those. Okay, negative 9x plus 2x is still negative 7x. I'm then going to drop down my first and last terms, and I'm now going to factor by grouping. So from the first pair of terms, I can remove a 9x, leaving x minus 1. The second pair of terms, I can remove a 2, leaving x minus 1. If I've done this correctly and it's factorable, I have a common binomial factor, which I can remove. And then the remaining factors of 9x and plus 2 form the terms of my other binomial. Okay, once you have it set in this form, it's linear factors. Okay, and so you can set them equal to 0. The value of x that gives you a 0 here is 1. And again, if you are looking to find the value of x that gives you a 0, when the leading coefficient is something other than 1, you take the opposite of your constant, so negative 2, divide by your leading coefficient, 9. Okay, now, when you need to, or when you write these answers, okay, because you're dealing with square root, okay, absolute values with higher degree polynomials inside of them are another case, okay, but when you're dealing with square roots, you have to check your solution. Okay, so we have to come back in and test both of these. So when we test the first one, 1, we see the square root of 1 plus 3, is that equal to 3 times 1 minus 1? So here we get the square root of 4, which is 2, is equal to 3 minus 1, which is 2. So this first one checks. Okay, if we plug in the negative 2/9 here, okay, so we don't even need to know what the actual answer is. So if I put in a negative 2/9 for x plus 3, which is 27/9, and I want to see, is that equal to 3 times negative 2/9 minus 1? I don't even need to go through and know what these are, but I know I'm going to have a negative number. Minus 1 gives me a negative number. Can the square root of something be a negative? So this one doesn't check. This is an extraneous solution. Okay, so when you are working by hand, okay, make sure you double check for extraneous solutions. You have radicals. Okay, same again, we'll talk through how to do these by hand, but on the calculator, it's just a matter of entering correctly. So use the solve feature. The square root button is second x, or second times. Write your whole expression that's in the radical and then close it off. So here's the square root of x plus 3. Set that equal to 3x minus 1. And then tell the calculator, comma x, that you want it to solve for that variable.
and it will give you your solutions. In this case, there's just the one solution, and that would be your answer.